Hello, I'm HG Tudor. On Saturday, I attended a dinner party. That's not particularly remarkable. I do attend quite a number. When I'm away, I don't. But when I'm back at one of the Tudor towers, I often find myself invited to a dinner party and sometimes hosting them myself. Very enjoyable they are too, for they provide me with stimulation, an opportunity to control people in a benign way, engage in interesting conversation with some long-standing friends, and also meeting new people also through my extensive social network. And it came to pass that this weekend I came upon an interesting piece of information for someone who had spent some time dealing with none other than this one's wife. A couple of weeks ago, I'd received an invitation to attend a dinner party. And a friend of mine, who's a long-standing friend that I've known for many, many years, wanted our group to meet a new business associate that he had struck up an accord with before he and his wife headed back to Canada. Yes, he was a gentleman from one of our Commonwealth countries. The dinner party took place at my friend's well-appointed home in the countryside, where one was able to stay over, so libation was engaged in, and I was introduced to the husband, who to my mind was somewhere in his mid to late 40s, not a bad-looking chap, and his delightful wife, who was elegant and also easy on the eye. They were both pretty much down to earth, pleasant to talk to, and engaging. I won't go into detail as to what his area of business is out of politeness to him, but he is pretty effective in his field. Anyway, it then came about that my host had seated me next to this gentleman's wife at dinner, which I was quite happy about. She was sat to my right, and we were able to engage in a prolonged conversation about a variety of topics. I sensed from her the emotional empathy that flowed from her, and naturally, painted white, I subjected her to the ultra charm, complimenting her on what she was talking about, admiring some of her jewellery, and being a pleasant individual in the course of our discussions. We were talking about a variety of different things. She was asking me about some of my investment interests, which had a degree of interest to her also, given the area in which I was currently investing, and she was keen to pick my brains for some insight in that regard, and I was happy to share some information in that respect. I also asked her about her husband's work in Europe, and whilst he'd spoken about it to me, I was also keen to learn more about what she thought of it, and whether the bond that I detected to them when I spoke to them as a couple when we were having aperitifs earlier on was being extended to talking about him when his presence wasn't looming large over her. Talk then turned to, naturally, politely asking her, "And what do you do then?" Hitherto it appeared that she provided mainly a supportive role to her husband's endeavours, which involved quite a bit of travel, etc. She then laughed self-effacingly and said, "Officially, I'm a biochemist, but in actuality, I write cookbooks." I felt part of me groan inwardly because, as regular viewers will be aware, cookery is not a particular favourite topic of mine, but nevertheless, for the purpose of charming this individual and asserting control over her, I soldiers on. "Ah," I exclaimed, "are you a chef then?" "Do you have your own television programme?" I joked. "Oh no," she replied warmly, although I do actually know a lot of chefs through my work. Toronto, which is where she lived, may be a big city, but in many respects it's a very small town. Most of us, she explained, in the food world do know each other, and we're quite a close community. Naturally, I'd heard of a number of cooks and chefs, but it's not an area that I would claim to be particularly well versed in. So I wanted to know more about the area in which she worked. What sort of cookbooks do you write then? I asked. Are they just for display only, or is there some actual substance behind them? I teased. She appreciated my interest and answered with enthusiasm. Oh, they're very substantive. I've actually used my background in biochemistry to delve into food sources, nutrients, nutrition, organic as opposed to traditional farming methods. I've written books and articles for omnivores and vegans and vegetarians. I've spent years in test kitchens perfecting recipes and developing alternative meals for those with food sensitivities and food allergies. All of this was rather involved, I thought, and it was interesting because I remarked that it's often the case, of course, that baking is a science. You have to have the ingredients exact for it to work, whereas cooking allows you a greater degree of leeway. A bit of this, throw a bit of that in, let's see what happens. She was in agreement, but said that the biochemistry aspect of it had allowed her to come up with some creations which were rather unusual. I appreciated her technical approach to this, and while she was both pleasant and interesting, I liked her enthusiasm for her topic. She explained that when her children were younger, she wrote a cookbook for busy mothers who, although they might be pressed for time, they still wanted to serve healthy meals and snacks to their families. She explained that when she and her husband were first married, they lived out to the west and they kept bees and chickens and goats. She went on to explain that she'd always had a big garden, and even now, though their children were away at school and they've less space, she's very much into growing her own herbs, drying her own herbs, fruits and vegetables. She said, with a shy smile, I even make herbal teas. I make my own beef and fruit jerky. Now, whilst I'm not particularly interested in cooking, I do enjoy food, and therefore I commented genuinely, well, that all sounds delicious and delightful. So are you working on a book at the moment? She replied, yes, I am, but I don't think I'll actually get it published. I was slightly puzzled by this response, and I asked, why not? You seem to have a lot of experience indeed. You seem to come at the topic from a slightly different angle, a little bit Heston Blumenthal, if I may say so, but with a more homely aspect to it. She thanked me for the compliment and explained that she thought that her New York publisher had blacklisted her. Why would you think that? I asked. She said, because I don't like social media. I don't have a social media presence, and I won't play the game. What do you mean? I asked. You won't play the game. Well, I'm interested in the topic for the interest in the topic. I actually enjoy cooking and the researching and creating the ingredients. I'm all about the substance. I'm neither a celebrity nor an influencer. I noticed that she grimaced when she said the word influencer. Throughout our discussion, I couldn't help but be reminded of This One's Wife, not because she was similar to the lady that I was talking to, but quite naturally, given that This One's Wife's clusterfuck of a cooking show had received prominence, here we are with someone who actually had some talent and ability, yet it wasn't being broadcast because she refused to play the influencer and celebrity game. Whereas we had the contrast with This One's Wife, that she has neither ability nor substance, but she is willing, as a narcissist, to play being celebrity or influencer. I decided that I would make that observation. Ah, I see. You're not willing to be like This One's Wife. Naturally, I used her actual name. My dinner companion laughed. Oh, you know her. I said, yes, I'm aware of her. I think most people are, aren't they? Although she is a somewhat vacuous individual. Pleasingly, my dinner companion nodded. She said, you know something? I once had a rather strange week-long encounter with her. My ears pricked up at this. Really? I asked. She continued, as I mentioned, Toronto may be a big city, but it's really quite a small town. And I've got a friend. He's a chef, and he dated her for a period of time, you know. You might have heard of him. Is that Cory I asked. She looked at me. Oh, you know him? I said, no, I don't know him. I've never met him, but I have heard his name before. He's been mentioned in relation to the fact that he was in a relationship with her. She then said, with a rather downcast look. "We don't like her." "And why not?" I asked. "Well, we were rather shocked by what she did. You know, us as Canadians have a reputation for being polite." I nodded. "It's true, we are polite. We try not to go public with, how shall I put it," she said, "our disapproval of people. We knew that he was in a relationship with this actress, and nobody was actually aware of anything amiss. As far as we all knew, that they were in a relationship together, that she was with him. And what we later found out was that alongside that, she started a relationship with Prince Harry. She kept it secret, but then it got out. Amongst the group, it was something of a bomb blast that she treated Cory this way. I said nothing, albeit it didn't surprise me that, of course, a narcissist was having parallel relationships and cheating on somebody with somebody else. I remained silent, allowing her to continue. She explained, "As I said, we Canadians are so polite, I suppose you could describe it more as a quiet fallout. But still, we were shocked by it. I'd never presume to speak for Cory, nor would I ask him about her. It's none of my business after all. He's a private person, and he keeps his thoughts to himself. He's since moved on. He's happy. He's successful. He has a lovely family." She then fell silent after explaining this, and I wanted to learn what she meant about the week-long encounter that she'd had with this one's wife. I reminded her, "So you had a strange encounter with her that lasted a week? What was that?" "Oh, sorry," she said. "Yes, I did. It was really odd. I knew Cory, but I didn't know her, and she wasn't really part of our group. I had seen her around. I hadn't spoken to her. And then one time, completely out of the blue and unsolicited, I received a text message from her. I was really surprised by that. I didn't realise she even knew who I was. I hadn't shown much interest in Cory's friends, but I assumed that he must have ended up giving her my contact information, although I was never asked if he could do that." I was unsurprised, of course, by this hoovering by this one's wife of somebody without prior permission or involvement. After all, as you know, this one's wife behaves with no boundary recognition through her sense of entitlement. "So she got in touch with you, did she? What was odd about the communication?" I asked. "Well, she started off by saying she wanted to pick my brains. I was slightly flattered, but then she started to ask me lots and lots, and I mean lots of questions. Bear in mind, I don't know her. And she was asking me things for recipes. She was asking for tips. At first, I wanted to be helpful, but then she kept asking for more and more information. And I started to feel like I was just being used like a book for her, that she could extract information from me. I didn't know her in the slightest. She didn't want to meet up. All she was doing was texting me repeatedly during the day and also at night, wanting information about recipes and wanting information about tips. It was almost as if she was bleeding me dry of my information. And I was pretty hesitant to answer. First, I was helpful, but then I started to delay my responses, and she'd press all the more. Many of the things that she asked were actual nonsense, didn't make sense. It made me feel a bit uncomfortable, actually. She became such a pest, I ended up having to keep my phone on mute during the day and shut it off at night because she kept pinging texts to me. On it went, and it got to the point where I stopped even answering her, but that didn't deter her, and I ended up, after a week of this, blocking her. She glanced at me. I could tell she was seeing if I was thinking that she'd be unkind in what she'd done. I thought that I would provide her with some validation. I think I'd have done the same as you, to be honest. It's rather intrusive behaviours of hers, isn't it? She nodded. "You know, despite the fact that I am polite, I did notice something very much about her that was apparent from the way that she was asking the questions." I said, "What was that?" She replied, "She's the most vapid person I've ever had to deal with." Vapid. There was just no substance to what she was asking. She was using me and trying to get information from me, but all of it was just vapid. That was the overarching impression I was left with in respect of her. I nodded and explained, probably for the best, that you had nothing more to do with her. After all, she's Harry's problem now, isn't she? She laughed at that, and we moved the topic on to something else. But I thought it would be interesting to share that with you, valuable viewers, as another individual that's had some involvement with this one's wife, who found herself being picked for information by this one's wife, demonstrating her sense of entitlement and lack of boundary recognition, who would pester somebody for information irrespective of not really knowing them, and doing so on an ongoing and repeated basis, hoovering and hoovering, trying to assert control and trying to get the residual benefit of information out of this particular cook. She was a pleasant lady, very nice lady that I was sat next to at dinner, and I could see that she, in a sense, felt a little bit bad about the way that she had treated this one's wife. Naturally, I didn't tell her anything about the extent to which I know about this one's wife, but I thought you'd be interested to learn more about this person's experience, which only goes to demonstrate that not only is she vapid, she's an idea thief also.